While my wife's wake filled our living room, my son-in-law dragged 40 years of my tools to the curb and told mourners the house was being cleared for sale. Beneath my hand-plane case, I found an estate inventory dated before Helen died. Signed by him, Brent thought grief had made me harmless. I folded the page, called one person, and walked back inside before he saw what I was carrying. 3 weeks earlier, Helen was still alive. Her hospital bed stood beside the front window of our Pittsburgh house, where she could see the maple tree. Cancer had reduced her voice, not her authority. She still noticed when I pretended my right shoulder did not hurt. We had been married 44 years. I was 68, retired from the county fire investigation unit, and slower than the man who once crawled through burned row houses. Neighbors knew only that I repaired furniture. That suited me. Attention belonged to evidence, not the person carrying the clipboard. My workshop held chisels bought before our daughter was born, planes inherited from my father, and a red cabinet marked with steel tags. Each tag matched my brown inventory book. A habit learned after a warehouse fire erased 3 tool crews records. Helen teased that I would identify every screwdriver before noticing my pants were missing. During her final month, laughter cost breath, so I became careful about earning it. Our daughter, Kata, came after teaching school. She was 36. Her son, Owen, was 7, and taped drawings of dragons around Helen's bed. Kara's husband, Brent Hayes, spoke as though grief required a project manager. He owned a small real estate redevelopment company and knew the price of almost anything with a roof. At first, I was grateful. Brent arranged medicine deliveries, found a substitute nurse, and gave relatives visiting hours. When my mind stalled over funeral questions, he filled the silence. Then his help began to sound like permission. He told the hospice nurse which room she could enter. He took Kara's phone during visits because messages were overloading her. He began opening mail addressed to Helen and me, saying bills could not wait for sentiment. One evening, I found him photographing the dining room cabinets. Insurance, he said. For what? A complete household record. You taught everyone to document. He smiled as if the idea belonged to me. I asked him to delete the pictures. He slipped the phone into his pocket. Daniel, nobody is trying to take your furniture. People rarely deny a plan before you accuse them, unless the plan is already in the room. Kara entered with a basin. Brent kissed her forehead, said she looked exhausted, and told her I was suspicious because I had not slept. Kara looked at me with concern instead of doubt, but the distinction felt fragile. That night, Helen asked me to open the cedar box beneath her bed. Inside were her wedding veil, Owen's first hospital bracelet, and a blue envelope sealed by her attorney. Claire Whitman. Claire has the original, Helen whispered. The original what? She gave me the look that had corrected me for 4 decades. You know, our updated papers held the house with survivorship rights. Helen's will nominated me to handle her separate estate, with Claire as backup. Brent had no role. Helen made me promise not to discuss the will while she was alive. I don't want people measuring my things while I'm still using them, she said. I thought of Brent's photographs but kept that thought from her. The next morning, he suggested a retirement community after the funeral. Kara cannot lose both parents to this house, he said. I asked whether Kara had said that. He replied that married people did not need to quote every private conversation. Kara denied asking him to speak for her. She rubbed her thumb along her phone, the same motion she used as a child hiding a bad grade. Brent thinks planning will make things easier, she said. Does it? She looked toward the driveway, where he waited in his car. It keeps him calm. That answer stayed with me. Brent had once restored my porch and stayed beside Owen's incubator for 3 nights. Trouble began when his first redevelopment failed. I loaned them money once and refused a second request. Kara asked us both to stop making her choose. So I stepped back. Don't abandon her just to keep peace with him, Helen said. I heard those words again each time Kara ended a visit early because Brent was waiting. 2 days before Helen died, Claire came, Brent tried to join us in the bedroom, but Helen raised one finger. Family only, he said. Helen's voice was barely audible. My lawyer is family to this conversation. You are not. Brent stepped out. Claire reviewed the blue envelope and confirmed Helen's choices remained unchanged. Afterward, I found Brent holding the brown inventory book. Looking for a wrench, I asked. He closed the book. I was seeing what might be worth donating. Nothing in this room is waiting for your decision. He set the book down carefully. Sooner or later, someone has to be practical. I moved between him and the cabinet. Not today. He walked out without arguing. I should have understood that he had already gathered what he needed. Helen died on a rainy Tuesday with Kara and me beside her. Brent began making calls before the nurse had covered the bed. By evening, he had chosen food and told relatives the wake would be held at our house Friday. I had not chosen the place. When I objected, Kara took my hand. Mom wanted people here, she said. Her face was emptied by grief. I agreed because I could not make her defend another decision. On Friday, black coats filled the hall. Helen's hospital bed was gone, leaving 4 pale dents in the carpet. I stood near her photograph and accepted condolences until Owen pulled my sleeve. Grandpa, he whispered. Why is Dad taking your red boxes outside? I followed Owen through the kitchen and into the garage. The workshop door stood open. Cold rain blew across the threshold. 2 young men in gray moving shirts were rolling my red cabinet down a ramp toward the street. Brent pointed at a stack of tool cases. Those go too, he said. Stop. The movers froze. Brent did not. Daniel, we discussed clearing the garage. You discussed it. I refused. He lowered his voice, though half the wake could see us through the kitchen windows. The house has to be presentable. For my wife's mourners. For what comes after. My right shoulder burned as I reached for the cabinet handle. One mover looked between us. Sir, our work order says estate removal. There is no estate authority for my tools. Brent pulled the younger man aside. His wife died 3 days ago. He's confused. I asked to see the work order. Brent stepped in front of the mover. You're making a scene during Helen's wake. You put my livelihood on the curb during it. The rain darkened the wooden handles in an open crate. My father's jointer plane lay beneath a wet moving blanket. I picked it up and held it under my coat. Kara appeared in the doorway. What is happening? Brent answered before I could. Your father agreed the garage needed to be cleared. Now he doesn't remember. I never agreed. Kara pressed both hands to her temples. Behind her, guests had begun pretending not to listen. Can we please do this later, she asked. Tell them to bring the tools back inside. Brent touched her elbow. The movers are paid? Your father can sort what he wants after appraisal. They are already sorted. They are mine. His expression changed when Kara looked away. The concern disappeared and something flatter took its place. This house cannot become a shrine, he said. You are one fall away from Kara having to manage everything. Then she and I will talk. She has a husband for that. The sentence crossed a line. No rain could wash away. I told the movers they did not have permission to remove my property. The older one pulled out his phone and called his dispatcher. Brent accused me of wasting everyone's time. Then a sanitation truck turned onto our street. Orange disposal stickers had been attached to 2 broken shelves and a box of hand tools. Brent had scheduled bulk pickup for the same afternoon. I walked into the street and stood beside the cabinet. Nothing leaves. The sanitation driver stopped and asked who owned the items. Brent raised his hand. Family estate. He said, I'm the authorized representative. He's not. I said. The driver looked at my black suit. The funeral flowers visible through the window. And the plane under my coat. He radioed his supervisor and moved on without collecting anything. Brent smiled at the watching neighbors. Grief does strange things. I had spent 29 years hearing people explain fire scenes before the smoke cleared. The more often someone repeated a conclusion, the more carefully I looked at what they hoped nobody would inspect. I photographed the curb from the sidewalk. I photographed every sticker, every open crate, and the mover's truck number. I did not photograph Brent. His actions were already in the frame. He laughed, still playing investigator, still preserving what happened. Kara came down the driveway. Dad, please come inside. People are asking for you. Did you authorize this? Her eyes moved toward Brent. I thought he was taking donations to storage. Did you authorize him to clear my workshop? I signed something about helping with Mom's things. Brent interrupted. A routine family consent. Where is it? I asked. With the rest of the planning papers. Kara's face tightened. I don't remember a list. Because you signed several pages while arranging hospice reimbursement. Brent said. You were overwhelmed. He had used her grief as both signature and excuse. I told the movers to leave the cases where they stood until ownership was confirmed. Their dispatcher instructed them to do exactly that. Brent argued. But paid workers follow liability before pride. Guests drifted back toward the living room. Kara returned inside with Owen. I remained in the rain, covering tools with plastic sheets from the garage. My neighbor, Samir Patel, crossed the street carrying a blue tarp. I saw them start before the first guest arrived. He said, Did Brent say where they were going? He told the movers the valuable pieces went to an auction warehouse and the rest went to disposal. Did they take anything? Samir pointed to the empty space beside my lathe. A green chest and 2 canvas rolls. The green chest held precision measuring tools. One canvas roll held chisels made by my grandfather. The other held ordinary plumbing wrenches. Brent had not removed random clutter. Someone had selected items by value. I checked the shelves. Small white labels had been placed beneath several objects. Each contained a handwritten code and estimated price. Samir helped me roll the red cabinet back toward the garage. One wheel caught on the curb. When I lifted the corner, a folded sheet slid from beneath the lower tray and landed in the water. At the top were the words household and estate inventory. The first page listed my tools. The second listed Helen's cedar box, our dining furniture, my truck, and the contents of the upstairs rooms. The document was dated 2 days before Helen died. At the bottom, beside the words authorized family representative, was Brent Hayes' signature. He came back into the garage as I reached that line. Give me that, he said. I folded the wet pages once and put them inside my coat. Brent closed the garage door behind him. That inventory is preliminary, he said. Preliminary to what? Helping Kara understand the estate. Helen was alive when you signed it. He stared at the pocket inside my coat. The date must be wrong. The prices look current. You're twisting paperwork because you never trusted me. Who made the list? An estate professional. Which one? He opened the garage door again. Go mourn your wife. It was a vicious instruction from a man who had interrupted my morning with movers. I waited until he returned inside. Then placed the inventory pages in a clean plastic sleeve. Water had blurred one corner. But the date, item codes, and signature remained clear. I photographed both sides beside a ruler and wrote the time, location, and names of the people present. Old habits are not authority. Retirement had ended my right to direct any investigation. It had not erased my duty to preserve what belonged to me. Samir signed a short statement describing what he had seen. The moving dispatcher sent me a copy of the work order after confirming I was the homeowner. It identified Brent as the customer and listed the destination as Keystone Estate Services. I called the company from its public number. A woman named Vera Long answered. I told her my name, address, and the number printed on the work order. Her tone changed. Mr. Hart, I need to speak carefully. We were retained for a household liquidation scheduled to begin Monday. Retained by whom? Brent Hayes signed the intake. What authority did he provide? He represented that his wife was the primary heir and that you had agreed to relocate. I agreed to neither. Vera stopped the scheduled pickup while her counsel reviewed the file. She could not release Brent's full communications without permission or legal process. But she confirmed that her company had created the inventory form. Was the date generated by your system? I asked. Yes. Can a client change it? Not after submission. The list had not been misdated. Brent had ordered an estate inventory while Helen could still hear squirrels at the window. Vera also confirmed that the missing green chest and canvas rolls had reached her warehouse that morning. She placed them on hold and promised nothing would be sold. I called Claire Whitman next. She was still at the wake, speaking with Helen's sister near the dining room. We met in my bedroom and closed the door. Claire examined the inventory through the sleeve. Brent has no authority over your property, she said. Helen's death does not change your ownership of the house or tools. Could Kara have authorized him? Not for property she doesn't own. Claire explained the lines cleanly. The house had passed to me through survivorship rights and never entered Helen's probate estate. My tools were separately mine. Helen's will nominated me as personal representative, but the court would still need to appoint me. Until then, nobody could claim authority merely by being related. What about the things that were Helen's? They stay protected until a lawful inventory is made. The irony sat between us. Brent's false inventory had created evidence, not authority. Claire contacted the probate court's emergency filing service and prepared notices to the moving company, auction company, and Brent. She advised me to report the removed tools as disputed property, not to accuse anyone of theft until the facts were documented. Will the police arrest him? I asked. Not because we want the scene to feel finished, she said. First, we stop the movement. Then we establish ownership and intent. Her answer brought me back to every burned room where certainty arrived slower than anger. I found Kara sitting on the stairs, her black dress gathered around her knees. Owen slept against her shoulder. I showed her the inventory. She read the date twice. Mom was still talking that day. Did you know Brent hired an estate company? He said he was getting estimates in case you wanted help. Did you authorize a full liquidation? I signed a page allowing him to coordinate Mom's bills and donations. I didn't read every attachment. Did it make him your agent? I don't know. Brent appeared at the bottom of the stairs. Stop interrogating her. Kara stood carefully so Owen would not wake. Why is your name on an estate inventory from before Mom died? Because somebody had to prepare. Your father was incapable of discussing reality. You told me it was an estimate. It is. Then why were his tools at an auction warehouse? For the first time, Brent had no smooth answer. He blamed the movers. Then Vera. Then the confusion of funeral week. Each explanation moved responsibility farther from his signature. I asked for every document Kara had signed. He said the files were at his office. Bring them tonight, Kara said. He looked at her as though she had spoken out of turn. We are not doing this in front of your father. They concern my mother and his house. You need rest. Kara's voice dropped. I need the papers. Brent took his coat from the hall tree. Before leaving, he leaned close to me. If you keep pushing, she'll lose the only stable person she has left. Then he walked through the room accepting sympathy from people who had not heard him. Kara did not defend him. She also did not promise to leave. Grief, marriage, money, and fear had wrapped around her too tightly for one document to cut through. I had stopped the auction. But the inventory raised a harder question. Was it merely Brent's arrogant planning? Or proof that he had built a larger trap before Helen died? Would you confront him with the inventory or wait for the full file? Tell me your choice. And subscribe as I learn what his signature had already set in motion. After the last mourner left, the house sounded damaged. Folding chairs had marked the floor. Helen's photograph remained above cold coffee and wilting lilies. The workshop smelled of rain from the tools we had carried back inside. Kara stayed with Owen in the guest room. Brent did not return. Near midnight, she found me drying my father's plane with a soft cloth. He says you are trying to turn me against him. She said, what do you say? I say I don't know who told me the truth. That answer hurt, but it was honest. I showed her the moving order and let her call Vera from her own phone. Vera confirmed only what she was allowed to confirm. Brent had signed the intake, described himself as authorized, and scheduled removal. Kara sat at the workbench. He said the company belonged to a friend. Why would that matter? Because his development project is short on cash. He said a friend could advance money against estate sale proceeds. But only if the inventory was complete. The plan widened. Brent had not simply wanted a clean garage. He had treated our household as collateral for his deadline. Kara admitted that his latest project was approaching foreclosure. Their savings were gone. He had opened a home equity line on their house after telling her it was temporary. When she objected, he reminded her that he paid the mortgage and could seek full custody if she became unstable. Why would he call you unstable? She looked at the floor. I took medication after Owen was born. He kept the bottles in the old doctor's letter. That doesn't make you unfit. I know that when you say it. I wanted to tell her to stay. Change every password. And never go home. But the skill I trusted most was not command. It was establishing safe ground before asking someone to move. What do you want tonight? I asked. I want Owen here. I want an attorney who isn't Claire. Because Claire represents Mom's estate. And I want copies before Brent knows I'm asking. Claire contacted a family lawyer named Nina Brooks. Kara spoke with her privately in the den. I stayed in the workshop and kept drying steel. While they talked, I remembered the first year of Kara's marriage. Brent had borrowed my truck and returned it with a crushed fender. He claimed a parking lot driver had left without stopping. I found yellow concrete dust inside the damaged panel and knew he had struck a barrier at his own job site. I confronted him at dinner. Kara begged us not to fight. Brent apologized to her. Not me. And I accepted it because Helen squeezed my hand beneath the table. Later, Helen told me she had squeezed my hand to slow me down. Not silence me forever. You keep choosing between explosion and surrender. She said, there is a whole honest world between them. For years, I had failed to live there. That night, I chose the honest middle. I did not threaten Brent, post the inventory online, or call relatives to take sides. I created a written list of missing property. Samir added the time the movers arrived. The sanitation supervisor confirmed Brent had ordered pickup 2 days earlier. Vera preserved the intake file and warehouse camera record under instruction from her counsel. Claire filed for an emergency order preventing removal or sale of household property until ownership and estate authority were determined. She attached the inventory, moving order, and my ownership records. The police took an informational report and arranged for the green chest and canvas rolls to remain at the warehouse pending release. They did not label a family dispute a crime before investigation. That restraint protected the evidence from becoming theater. In the morning, Brent sent Kara a message saying he would return only if I apologized. She did not answer. An hour later, he remotely disabled her access to their joint bank account. That action answered a question the inventory had raised. Control was not a reaction to the conflict. Control was the method. Nina helped Kara document the account lockout and open an account in her name. Kara changed the password to her school email and requested copies of the papers she had signed. She shook during every call, but she made them herself. At noon, Claire received notice that Brent had filed his own petition in probate court. He asked to be appointed special administrator of Helen's estate, claiming immediate action was needed to preserve wasting assets. His petition said I had abandoned valuable property on the curb. It said I suffered memory lapses. It said Kara supported his appointment. Kara read the last line and went still. I never agreed to that. The petition did not contain her signature. It contained Brent's sworn statement describing her support. Then your voice belongs in the record, Nina said. Kara looked at me. If I oppose him, he will know I'm leaving. You decide when to say it. I told her, but let the decision be yours, not his threat. She asked Nina to prepare a declaration. That was the moment I stopped thinking of myself as the man who had to rescue everyone. My job was narrower and harder. Preserve the ground. Tell the truth. Leave Kara enough room to stand on it. The probate court set an emergency hearing for Monday morning. Brent treated the hearing as another deadline he could manage. He sent family members an email saying I was blocking an orderly estate process and allowing valuable property to decay. He attached photographs of my tools on the curb. He did not realize my own photographs showed the movers, disposal tags, and rain before I had touched anything. On Saturday, he came to the house with a locksmith. I met them on the porch. Samir watched from across the street while Claire listened through my phone. Brent held a work order authorizing him to secure estate property. The court has not appointed you, I said. The petition is pending. Pending is not granted. The locksmith read the notice Claire had posted beside the door, and refused the job. Brent accused me of manipulating a tradesman. He read the paper. I said, "You should try it." His face tightened. Monday. The judge will hear that you left thousands of dollars of equipment in the rain. You put it there. Can you prove that? He glanced towards Samir and realized too late that he had asked the question in front of a witness. Then he made the mistake that revealed the deeper plan. Once the house is empty, the advance clears. Kara's problems disappear. And you can live somewhere people monitor you. He had converted our grief into a schedule empty house. Cash advance. Relocation. What advance? He caught himself. Estate liquidity. Against property you don't own. Against proceeds Kara will inherit. She hasn't inherited this house. That is a technical argument for Monday. He left with the locksmith, still believing a courtroom would treat confidence as authority. That afternoon, Vera Long requested permission to speak with me and Claire. Her company's counsel had reviewed Brent's intake file. Because I disputed his authority and the court had scheduled a hearing, Vera could provide records through the proper process. The intake included photographs taken inside our house while Helen was alive. Some showed closed upstairs rooms. Brent could only have taken them while I was helping Helen or sleeping. The inventory values matched an advance agreement with a private lender called Iron Gate Capital. Brent had promised that a full household liquidation would produce enough money to support his redevelopment closing. The lender had not received any estate assets, but the agreement created a financial deadline. Vera also found a note from Brent directing the company to move me into temporary senior housing before the sale preview. He had no reservation under my name. He had attached a brochure and treated relocation as something other people would make happen. Kara listened without speaking. "Did he discuss senior housing with you?" Claire asked. "He said Dad might like a smaller place someday. He never said before an estate sale." Vera read another line from the intake. "Client states daughter has durable authority and husband may coordinate on her behalf." Kara shook her head. "I have no authority over Dad." The papers she signed during hospice had finally arrived from Brent's office by courier. Nina reviewed them. One page allowed Brent to coordinate donations from Helen's closet. Another allowed him to speak with a medical billing service. Nothing authorized a household sale, estate petition, or control of my property. Buried between them was an unsigned affidavit stating that I had voluntarily abandoned my tools and planned to relocate. A blank line waited for Kara's signature. Brent had expected grief to finish what pressure began. Kara decided to file her declaration before the hearing. She stated that she did not support Brent's petition, had not authorized him to inventory or remove my property, and had been denied access to joint money after questioning him. "Are you ready for him to read it?" Nina asked. Kara held Owen's dragon drawing between her hands. "I'm ready for him to stop speaking as me." She signed. Claire prepared the rest of the evidence. The deed confirmed the house passed to me outside probate, purchase receipts, insurance schedules, and my brown book tied the tools to me. Helen's will nominated me as personal representative. The court, not the family, would decide the appointment. My old service record had one limited use. It explained the steel tags and documentation system Brent had copied when creating his list. It did not give me special legal power. It showed that his inventory codes came from a book he had handled in my workshop. We compared them. Brent's item codes followed the same order as my brown book, including a mistaken duplicate number I had corrected by hand years earlier. He had not merely hired an appraiser. He had copied my private inventory to identify the most valuable tools. Sunday evening, Brent called Kara from a number Nina had approved for child-related communication. He told her the declaration would destroy their marriage. He said the judge would believe a businessman over a grieving teacher. Then he offered to restore her bank access if she withdrew it. Kara did not argue. "Put that offer in writing," she said. He ended the call. The call was not secretly recorded. Nina had listened with Kara's permission and made a contemporaneous note. The bank lockout already existed in its own records. We did not need to manufacture evidence when Brent kept creating it in ordinary channels. On Monday, we entered the Allegheny County Courthouse through a side door washed in gray morning light. Brent stood near the courtroom with a new attorney and a leather folder. He looked at my stiff shoulder. Kara's tired face, and the old brown inventory book under Claire's arm. Then he smiled. He still believed the book belonged to a confused carpenter. Judge Denise Halpern began with a narrow question. Who currently has lawful authority to control the property described in these filings? Brent's attorney argued that urgent preservation required his appointment. He described Brent as the only person who had acted while I left valuable tools exposed to weather. Claire did not begin with my grief or Brent's cruelty. She began with sequence. The moving work order was created before the wake. The sanitation pickup was scheduled before the tools reached the curb. Keystone Estate Services received selected items that morning. Brent's photographs were taken after his movers placed the tools outside. Samir testified by video from his office. He had watched the moving crew take the green chest from my workshop before guests arrived. He heard Brent identify valuable items for auction and lesser items for disposal. The moving dispatcher confirmed that Brent was the customer. The sanitation supervisor confirmed the pickup order. Neither had received authorization from me. Brent's attorney called the situation a family misunderstanding. Claire placed the signed inventory on the evidence screen. Then let us examine what was misunderstood. Vera Long testified that the form came from her company's protected intake system. Its date could not be changed after submission. Brent had signed as authorized family representative 2 days before Helen's death. The room became very still. Vera described the planned Monday liquidation and confirmed that Brent had represented the house as estate property, Kara as primary heir, and me as a willing resident of senior housing. She also confirmed that her company stopped all activity as soon as I disputed authority. Brent leaned toward his attorney. The attorney's expression told me he had not known about the advance agreement. Claire asked Vera how the tools had been selected. The client provided an inventory with item codes and values. She said, "My brown book appeared beside Brent's list. The same order. Steel tag numbers. And corrected duplicate code ran through both." I testified that Brent had handled the book in my workshop. I explained why the tags existed and how I updated the records. I did not claim that my past service made me infallible. Documentation does not make a person right. I said, it makes the claim testable. Brent's attorney asked whether grief could have affected my memory. Certainly. I said, that is why we have the mover. Dispatcher. Sanitation record. Auction file. Photographs. Deed. Receipts. And his signature. The judge looked at Brent. Mr. Hayes, did you sign this inventory? He admitted that he had. What authority did you possess on that date? My wife was the expected heir. Expected by whom? By the family. Claire submitted Helen's will. The clerk had authenticated the original from Claire's office. Helen nominated me as personal representative and named Claire as alternate. Kara was a beneficiary of the remaining estate after specific gifts and expenses. Brent was not named. Then Claire submitted the deed. The house had been held by Helen and me with a survivorship provision. Upon her death, her interest passed to me outside probate. The court did not need to decide who might inherit it someday. It was mine now. Purchase records and insurance schedules established separate ownership of the tools. My father's planes, my fire investigation equipment, and the red cabinets had never belonged to Helen's estate. The hidden authority in the blue envelope was not a weapon. It was a boundary Helen had chosen while fully competent. The judge stated that a nomination in a will did not itself grant power before appointment. Then she appointed me temporary personal representative based on the authenticated will and the absence of any lawful reason to bypass Helen's choice. That was the second reveal. The evidence showed what Brent had done. Helen's documents established who had the right to act. Brent tried to explain the private advance. My intention was to protect Kara from debt. He said, Nina stood for the first time. Kara Hayes requests permission to address the court concerning that claim. Kara walked to the witness chair. Her hands shook, but her voice did not disappear. She testified that she had not authorized the liquidation, had not claimed authority over my house, and did not support Brent's petition. She described the papers he placed among hospice forms and the account access he removed after she questioned him. Brent stared at her. Kara, don't do this. Judge Halpern told him to speak through counsel. Nina showed the unsigned affidavit stating, I had abandoned my tools. Kara confirmed Brent had asked her to sign it after the wake. Why didn't you? Nina asked. Kara looked at me. Then at the judge. Because my father did not abandon those tools. My husband put them outside. And because grief is not consent. She then made the choice Brent had worked hardest to prevent. I have retained separate family counsel. I'm separating from my husband. I ask that all contact about our finances and our son follow the temporary plan my attorney filed this morning. Brent's polished expression broke. Your father planned this. Kara faced him. Dad gave me a lawyer and a room. I made the decision. The judge called a short recess while the lawyers reviewed the new filing. Nobody applauded. Justice was not a performance. And Kara's marriage was not entertainment. When court resumed, Judge Halpern denied Brent's petition. She ordered him and anyone acting for him not to remove, sell, transfer, or represent authority over property at my address. Keystone could return my tools to me after documenting condition and serial numbers. The judge preserved questions about false statements, financial coercion, and the advance agreement for proper investigation. She scheduled a sanctions hearing rather than declaring crimes from the bench without full process. Brent's attorney asked whether he could retrieve personal items from our house. He has no personal residence there, Claire said. The judge directed that any disputed item be handled through counsel. She would not let another curbside removal be disguised as urgency. Outside the courtroom, relatives who had received Brent's email asked whether he had inventoried the house before Helen died. He refused to answer. I refused too. Helen was more than the date on his form. Vera approached me with a condition report. The green chest was intact. Several chisels had surface moisture. One precision level was missing from the warehouse count. And her company had begun tracing the mover's intake. Brent overheard. This is absurd, he said. You won the house. What else do you want? My property returned and my daughter free to speak. You always hated me. I disliked some of your choices. I kept confusing silence with fairness. He turned to Kara. If you leave with him, don't come home. Kara held Owen's backpack against her chest. I already chose not to. She walked toward Nina. Not toward me. That mattered. She was not changing owners. She was reclaiming direction. At the courthouse entrance, Owen ran to her from the family waiting room. I stayed a few steps away until Kara reached for my hand. Only then did I take it. The order protected the property. But paper could not restore the morning before Helen died or remove Brent's voice from Kara's thoughts. It created time. And time was the first asset he could no longer inventory. Keystone returned my tools on Wednesday. Vera attended the delivery. Every case was photographed at the garage. The green chest was scraped. The chisels freckled with rust. And my grandfather's canvas roll smelled of dust and rain. The missing precision level turned up in the first mover's personal vehicle. He said it had slid behind a seat. His employer handled the matter. I accepted the tool, documented its condition, and let the company decide employment consequences. Not every wrong required me to become judge. The probate court later confirmed my appointment as personal representative. Claire and I made a lawful inventory of Helen's separate belongings. Kara attended. But I never asked her to value her mother's jewelry while choosing what to keep. Helen had left her cedar box to Kara. When I handed it over, Kara opened the lid and found the blue envelope copy beneath the veil. Helen had written one private line on the outside. Love is not authority over another person's voice. Kara pressed the envelope to her chest. Neither of us spoke for a while. Brent's advance agreement collapsed because he had no sale proceeds to pledge. His redevelopment entered foreclosure. The court imposed financial sanctions for the unsupported probate petition and referred the sworn statements for further review. The investigation into the removed property ended with restitution for damage and fees, rather than a dramatic arrest at our door. His worst immediate consequence was simpler. The people he had treated as extensions of his plans stopped signing. Kara obtained temporary control of her income and a structured parenting schedule through family court. She and Owen rented an apartment near his school after 6 weeks in my guest room. I offered to pay a year in advance. She accepted only the security deposit and first month. I need to know I can carry the rest. She said, I understood. Help becomes control when the giver cannot tolerate limits. Kara returned to teaching. The first morning, she stood in my kitchen wearing Helen's blue scarf and checked her bag 4 times. Owen ate toast at the counter. You're allowed to be nervous. I told her. Brent used to say nerves meant I wasn't ready. Sometimes nerves mean the decision belongs to you. She left without asking permission. My own repair took longer. For months, the sound of a truck slowing outside pulled me toward the window. I installed better locks and motion lights. But I did not turn the house into a bunker. Samir helped me rebuild the damaged workshop ramp. We left one shallow mark in the curb where the red cabinet wheel had caught. The mark reminded me that humiliation and evidence can occupy the same place. Brent had put the tools outside to show everyone I no longer controlled my life. By doing it publicly, he gave witnesses a clear view of his choice. I cleaned each chisel with oil and fine wool. I repaired the plane case last. The wooden lid had warped in the rain. I could have replaced it. But the plane had belonged to my father. I steamed the fibers, clamped the lid slowly, and waited. Restoration does not force wood back into shape. It introduces moisture, pressure, and time in careful amounts. Too much of anyone will break what you meant to save. That became the rule for my relationship with Kara. We did not pretend I had always protected her well. I admitted that I had withdrawn whenever Brent accused me of interfering. She admitted that she had repeated some of his claims because agreeing was easier than facing what they meant. We met with a counselor twice a month. We talked about Helen, money, Owen, and the difference between privacy and isolation. Some sessions ended with relief. Others ended with both of us tired and quiet. Progress was not the absence of hard conversations. It was our decision to return for the next one. Brent sent me 3 letters through his attorney. The first blamed financial pressure. The second said, every family makes plans after a death. The third contained an apology for how the timing looked. I answered none of them. Kara established her own conditions. Brent could communicate about Owen through the approved parenting system. He could not send messages through their son, discuss inheritance, or enter my property. Any broader reconciliation required financial disclosure, counseling, and sustained compliance with court orders. She did not promise forgiveness. Neither did I. 6 months after the wake, the Fire Investigation Unit invited me to teach a morning workshop on evidence preservation for new recruits. I almost declined. My shoulders still hurt. And I no longer enjoyed rooms where people introduced me by rank. Then I brought the wet inventory sleeve. I did not use family names. I showed how rain blurred one corner, but left the system date and signature readable. I explained why scene notes, independent witnesses, ordinary business records, and lawful authority must remain separate. One document can raise a question. I told them, a chain answers it. Afterward, a recruit asked whether preserving evidence makes betrayal easier to survive. It makes denial harder. I said, survival takes people. On the anniversary of Helen's death, Kara and Owen came to the house before sunrise. We carried coffee to the workshop and opened the garage door to the maple tree. Owen had grown tall enough to reach the bench vise. I showed him how to hold a scrapboard without placing his fingers near the blade. Will these tools be mine someday? He asked. Kara inhaled sharply, afraid of what the question might reopen. Some may be, I said, but not because you expect them, because I choose. And because you learn how to care for them. He nodded with the seriousness only children can give a simple rule. I opened the brown inventory book and added a new entry for the repaired plane case. I recorded the rain damage, the new hinge, and the date it returned to the shelf. Then I closed the book. My tools were no longer on the curb. More important, neither was my voice. Family can help carry grief, but nobody inherits the right to decide who you are. If someone crossed a boundary while calling it help, what proof would you need before trusting them again? Share your answer. And subscribe for more stories about quiet strength, lawful consequences, and dignity reclaimed.